Hi there, guys. It's Archie. I'm back for the ADHD Care podcast. I hope you're doing well. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, Vivienne, who is the director of the ADHD Babes, which is a support group for Black women and Black non-binary people of Afro-Caribbean descent with ADHD. So today, we're discussing and finding out from Vivienne some of the amazing work that they do within the support group itself. I've been trying to get hold of this support group for probably almost a year now, and I'm so pleased that we've managed to set some time to meet up and just catch up with as I said, with Vivienne. So I'm just going to bring Vivienne onto the call now.
Hey,
Hello,
hey, all right.
I'm good. You?
Yeah, I'm okay. All right.
Perfect. Can you see me and hear me? Okay.
Yes, yeah, all good.
Amazing. Great. I'm Archie. We never spoke before, and I believe you're Vivienne.
Yes, I'm Vivienne. Hi, Archie.
Nice to speak to you. Um, And I've just done a quick introduction. That's why, there's been a bit of a delay of me bringing you onto the podcast. So I apologize for
Right?
this slight delay. I'm so pleased to sit down with you and have a chat with you about all the amazing work that you do within your organization. So yeah, just to kickstart the conversation, for our listeners, I don't know, do you know much about us? Do you know about ADHD Care and some of the podcasts that we put out?
Only a little bit through Shauna.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Shauna
Perfect.
gave me a
That's
bit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because obviously I was out in the States a few years back. That's when I first
Oh,
heard about you guys. It's interesting, isn't it,
really?
that you're in the UK? No, I didn't know about you.
But you found out in the US?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's really that's cool.
Yeah. Because I went to some conferences over there and we were just talking about, support around in the UK. And, someone said, oh, yeah, have you heard of ADT Babes? I was like, no, I didn't know
Wow.
about them. And that's pretty
Oh,
much when I heard about you. You caught my attention, and I think we've been trying to reach out to speak to you guys for a while, and yeah, so glad that we managed to set some time aside to do that.
yeah. Oh, that makes
Yeah.
me really happy.
um, do you want to tell us about yourself within the ADHD Babe support group? Like, what's your role?
Yes, so my role is I'm the founder and the managing director, and I'm also the director of community outreach and wellbeing. So yeah, founded it around 5 years ago. In terms of managing director, like trying to do all the stuff behind the scenes and all the boring company's house stuff because we're a CIC, just general organizational stuff. And then the wellbeing and outreach is like planning our monthly and weekly timetable, kind of like hearing the voices of what the community want. And yeah, creating like a care, yeah, like the care element of what we do, just really making sure that that's tailored to what the community need.
Excellent. So, do you mind just telling us some of the inspiration behind of you founding ADHD Babes and the mission behind that in terms of supporting Black women and Black non-binary people of Afro Caribbean background?
hmm so the reason I started it was because I got diagnosed quite late. It was like early 20s. Um, and the person I was seeing at the time, they were very much like, oh, let's research and let's find out about what ADHD means. And oh my God, this is why you do this. And they were like really, really supportive. And within that, they wanted to go to like support groups because they also wanted support like as a partner of someone with ADHD. But whenever we would like go to them or like I would see like who was in the room, like sometimes it was online. I was always the only black person there, and I was always the youngest there. So yeah, it just felt like when they made the space, they didn't have me in mind in terms of like me showing up. And there was always like a feeling of, yeah, I'm not sure if they knew that I would show up here. So I just didn't feel very welcome. Um, they were kind of still encouraging me and they kind of suggested that, if you don't feel comfortable in these spaces, why don't you make your own? And I was like, that's such a good point. So then, yeah, I just jumped on Facebook. I started going into lots of ADHD chats and saying, is there any Black women in London specifically, actually, who want to just meet up and talk? And it kind of just carried on growing from there.
So, did you think that was 5 years ago? Was it?
Yeah, that was 5 years ago. It'll be six
Okay,
this year. Yeah.
right. Okay. During those early stages that you were trying to find out what's available, was there anything at all that you came across, or was that some of the inspiration that made you go, there isn't anything out there, so I might as well just set up my own.
Yeah, I think it, there was things out there. There were like a few meetups maybe on meetup.com. There were a couple websites where you could meet online. So there were a few things out there. There wasn't many. There wasn't many that centered like a woman's experience. There weren't any that I could see that was specifically for Black women. And then I did come across one later on that was based in the US. Um, so yeah, I think there were things out there, but it didn't feel like there was a space that really held the different parts of my identity. And because the diagnosis felt so confusing, I really feel like I needed something familiar to try and make sense of it, because all the stuff I was seeing didn't relate to like what I was experiencing. So I wasn't sure which part was my ADHD and what it would look like for someone like me.
If you think back to that initial group that you went to, that you didn't feel you were fitting in, if it was to be able to kind of differentiate the some of the challenges that you noticed that you felt you can relate to other people that weren't of color in that support group, what were some of these little differences that you noticed?
Um, I think contextually, it felt quite different because I was like the youngest there. The things they were speaking about were kind of like career focused things. They were speaking about like things to do with like raising a family. At the time I was 22. I've like never had a full-time job at that point. So like how my ADHD was presenting felt so far away from what they were doing. I was thinking, well, I'm not even anywhere near getting a full-time job. Yeah, it just felt like there was a distance in terms of what our ADHD was presenting in our day-to-day lives. And I guess the cultural nuance as well, because I was the only Black woman in the room. Um, there weren't conversations that were kind of culturally specific. So like stuff we speak about in ADHD Babes, where we're like, oh, we our teachers might have noticed that we don't, concentrate in school, but when we come home, because of the way the household is set up, we know we can't kind of show those symptoms, so we kind of suppress it or we mask it. But I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable saying that in a room where I was the only Black woman. Yeah, so it was things like that.
Yeah, and obviously being a woman of color as well. What was your upbringing like? Obviously living with ADHD, because obviously you were diagnosed late to some
Mm.
extent in your early, being an young adult in your 20s. Um, yeah, what was that like? Was there ever like a point where you questioned whether you might have ADHD, or was that ever flagged up at all at school, outside of school, or is that something that only kind of appeared to you in your kind of around about that time when you eventually got the assessment?
Um, no, it didn't flag in school. They did say that I had like anger management problems, so they like gave me a counselor in school specifically for that. The signs were all there in terms of like, saying that I've got good quality, but I don't concentrate. I don't finish exams or papers. I kind of like it's like I'm getting distracted towards the end. So all the symptoms were there, but I kind of just internalized them as personal problems. Like I just can't concentrate, or I just can't like I'm interested in too many things. And I definitely use things like sports to like get out a lot of my energy. So that also kind of kept me at a certain level where I wasn't rocking the boat too much. But yeah, I think I always knew or felt like I was just slightly off, like off a degree from most people. But I just couldn't word it, and I kind of just it just made me feel like a bit of an alien. Um, but yeah, it was only really in uni when I got diagnosed with like dyslexia and dyspraxia that I then started to like learn about neurodivergency. And they did mention in the assessment that I might have ADHD, and that was like my second year of uni. But she said she couldn't diagnose that because it's not under her remit. So she kind of recommended that I follow it through later, and I just, yeah, probably just suppressed that and then carried on going.
Yeah. And then eventually going through the assessment, then the diagnosis. How was that received amongst family, friends, when you eventually got the assessment and diagnosed?
I didn't really tell my family per se. I think they probably just found out as I was going along and sharing things on social media. So I didn't kind of like have a sit down. Um, like, hey guys, I've got news. But with my friends, it was quite seamless with most of my friends. It was kind of just like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. So that was fine. There was a couple people kind of in the wider community that were kind of like, that's, it's just a medical model. Make sure you don't take those meds, like they'll numb you out, stuff like that. So that kind of created a bit of unease, especially in the beginning. But most people were quite receptive, actually. But often people are kind of like, even regardless of the label, I just see you as you, which, yeah, was reassuring.
Yeah, yeah. And going back to ADHD Babes, how did you come up with that name?
That wasn't me, that was someone in the community.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when
yeah.
we're in the WhatsApp group, and we were saying, okay, yeah, guys, we're gonna make this official, we're gonna get social media. We did like a poll in the chat and said, okay, what names should we call it? And then people were throwing out lots of names, and ADHD Babes got the highest vote.
Wow. Okay. And it's stuck. It's very catchy as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us the setup of ADHD Babes? Like, who's involved and like some of the projects and things that you do?
Yeah, yeah. So currently we have three directors. We have me, and then we have our podcast director, and then we have a non-exec kind of secretary director as well. We have like different areas. So like the podcast team, they do their thing, and they're smashing it. And then we have like our support group team where we host our support group every 2 weeks. So yeah, there's about 4 or 5 of us, and we kind of rotate hosting that space. And then we have like the event section where um, we kind of encourage members, like if they have any personal interests or things that they like, they can like host sessions around that. So we have two babes that are like really interested in knitting, so they do like a knit and sip kind of event. We have another babe that really likes creativity, so they're organizing like live music events and live performance events, so babes can come and show their work. Um, and then we also have people that specialize in kind of developmental things. So some babes that specialize in careers, in CV writing. And then we have wider community kind of partners that do sessions around like finances or like mental well-being. We've done like in-person things like cooking workshops, like how to cook when you have low executive functioning. But also just like the social element as well, because often people are just like, I just want to be around people that understand me and are going to make me feel comfortable and validated. So we've done quite a few socials like theatre trips, gallery trips. Um, we went to the Hackney Black Eats as well. So yeah, we've got like quite a mix of kind of social things, things that are specifically developmental, like around ADHD. And then we have like, I guess, wider things where it's more about psychology, mental health, well-being. And then further to that, which we're building is kind of getting our voices heard in research. So we've done a few focus groups where yeah, we're allowing our voice to be heard in the literature because often yeah, our voices aren't pulled into the room. So that's another extension as well.
Yeah. So you are obviously based in the UK. Whereabouts in the UK are you based?
We're based in North London, but we actually do host our in-person events across London as well. So we try to mix it up. We haven't got to West London yet, but it's on the list.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so your community's grown, I'm assuming, over the last 5 years.
Hmm.
Yeah, you've had
Yeah,
so
yeah,
many
yeah.
people interested in joining and things. And as what are some of these things that people are coming and saying to you, going through the process of being diagnosed? Do you support people that are maybe thinking about going down the assessment route as well, kind of trying to understand more about ADHD and stuff like that?
Yes.
You
Yeah,
do?
yeah, that's one of our services. So if someone drops us an email or a DM, we like send them all the different options that they have when trying to seek a diagnosis and also kind of like the mental prep before going to your GP because it can be quite difficult, especially now where the waiting times are excessively long. There's a bit more gatekeeping. So yeah, we kind of give tips and advice on how to do that and also ask if people want to come back and ask more questions. Yeah, so we've been able to help quite a few people get diagnosed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On your website, you talk a lot about intersectionality and cultural identity, and how does that play a role in your services in supporting individuals?
Yeah, definitely. So um the way our sessions are tailored is always tailored towards something specific to our identity. So like we have an ADHD coach that's coming in and doing sessions around, ADHD, like how do we manage our ADHD on a day-to-day basis or in the workplace. But we made sure that it's a Black woman who has experience of working with Black women, Black non-binary people with ADHD, so they can kind of hold conversations that also intersect, like when you go into the workplace and you might get the label of being an angry Black woman, or not having the grace to just be quiet in a room without people thinking that you're being off or you're being standoffish. So because they have that experience and nuance, they were able to hold space for those types of conversations. So we can think about, yeah, the ADHD side, and also the fact that you carry ADHD, but you move through the world and get perceived differently because of the body that you're walking in. Um, yeah, so we always try to make sure our sessions are tailored specifically to hopefully all of them, but at least one of the intersections.
Yeah. When I got, have you been to the States at all? Like just as part of your work, networking with, or do you network with anyone over in the States?
Yes, we do. Yeah, yeah. So we actually last year we launched our US time zone friendly support group. So we have two hosts from the US who, yeah, once a month they host a support group.
Yeah. Can you, because obviously I can see the difference from a professional's point of view. You know, I network with lots of clinicians and things, providers of in the States, particularly like when they talk about marginalized communities, Black communities, and a non-binary, there are differences. UK, I don't know, I'm interested to get your take on this. I feel we are behind. You know, I
Mm.
think there's so many initiatives that I go to the States and I go, there's Black, Professionals Association. There's all of these amazing work that people are doing to try and, tap into like, the communities that are marginalized in terms of
Mm.
raising awareness and things like neurodiversity. What are some of these things that you're noticing that we are still lacking, particularly in the UK, generally, when you think about mental
Mm.
health, mental well-being, and then you add the ADHD into that mix?
Hmm. I think British culture is quite polite and quite covert in their kind of intentions and behavior. So I think whereas in the US it's very overt, like people will verbally show that there's discrimination there. Like you can see it objectively and out loud. So I think that the response to that, it makes it easier to say, okay, we can see that there's a problem, let's find a solution. Whereas I think here, because there's still actually a debate where people are like, you know, we're not racist, we don't discriminate. We're still at the point where we're arguing whether or not the discrimination is real. So I think within all of that, we actually have wasted so much time where we could have just been focusing on finding a solution. And because the way it comes out is also covert, I think it also makes it like that little bit more insidious and harder to uproot. Because if it's kind of people making side comments, or you just never seem to get a promotion, even though colleagues that you work harder than do, it's like it's harder to quantify that than someone just kind of looking you dead in the face and calling you the N-word with a hard ER. Like there's the way they do it here, I think is so much harder to pinpoint, and it makes you doubt yourself unless you actually start speaking to people and you realize that actually no, I'm not alone in this. So I think that makes it a lot harder. I think they've done so much research to identify that there are disparities with, especially like within mental health for the Black community, but then the follow up of the actions just doesn't come through. And yeah, I think that's partly why. Because yeah, it's status quo to kind of even name things and just say that's what it is, but I don't see that like motivation to actually, okay, what are we going to do about this? And that's why so many grassroots organizations like pick up the brunt of that.
Yeah, and that's why I was intrigued by your organization and what you've set up. And if we can see more of this, certainly what you're
Mhm.
talking about solutions, when we can see there is a problem or there's a gap, it's about
Yeah.
us then up to us to going, okay, I want to set up the support group. I want to set up a podcast dedicated to whatever. And I think it's
Hmm.
that. And I saw that more in the States, as I was saying, that there is that togetherness and there's the willingness to kind of go, we're in this together. We can come up with solutions and support rather than it just going, oh, there isn't this, there isn't that, and just pointing the finger. Moving on
Wasting
from
time.
that, yeah, wasting time, exactly. Let's talk about the Outside the Box campaign,
Mhm.
which is obviously part of the ADHD Babes. Do you want to tell us more about what that is and how it supports its members?
Yes, so last year we did our first like official fundraiser. So we actually never kind of publicly raise funds. So within that, we also wanted to highlight why it was important to do this. So the Outside the Box campaign was showing that yes, we do have a diagnosis, yes, we do, under the medical model, this is the way it's described, but it was trying to see us wider than that. It doesn't have to be so binary that if you have ADHD, it means X. And often I think that's what happens in the world, and that leads to kind of ableism and people misunderstanding our difficulties. Like I've heard people say specifically that, how can you have ADHD? You finish university. So the kind of binary way of looking at what our disability is, what neurodivergency is, we wanted to, yeah, say like outside of the box. It's not just the box. Like it's such a spectrum, and so many people are. The spectrum is even a circle. Like it's not even just a straight line. So yeah, the idea was like trying to raise that profile so people know that ADHD looks different for different people. And the beginning of creating a more inclusive and accommodating world is trying to see the person in front of you as they are, and then seeing where you can support them within that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Amazing work. And if people want to join in that campaign,
Mhm.
how can they sort of reach out?
So last year it was about creativity. So people could send in like blog posts or artwork or poems. And then we actually did name a winner, Kasira, and we shared her in our newsletter. But it is a campaign that we want to continue doing. So we're actually open to ideas and collaborations. So yeah, anyone can just drop us an email if they have an idea or a suggestion. We're very, yeah, like we have a why not approach where if anyone has an idea, it's just figuring out how do we make the idea happen rather than kind of starting with a no and then working backwards. So yeah, you
Yeah.
can just shout us.
Do you support parents as well who have children with ADHD?
Yeah, we have parents in the group as well. We don't have a specific group for parents, but we are we're trying to create a partnership with a group called Black SEM Mamas that support Black mothers with children who have SEN needs. So we're thinking of a way we can collaborate because lots of our parents in the group also have children that have ADHD. So we're thinking how we can collaborate to create like a kind of well-being space for them specifically. But some of them come and it's really rich actually because they share their experience of being parents, and a lot of us that are not parents are just like in awe of like how they're managing, and it's nice to also like get that intergenerational conversation going. So yeah, really
Yeah.
appreciate them.
Going back to the last point you mentioned there about the outside the box campaign, is that part of the whole creative expression that I read through on your website in dealing with ADHD? Um, is that am I right in thinking that is creative expression?
Yeah, that
Um,
was how we did it last year.
yeah, that was okay. Yeah, yeah, because I read
Yeah,
somewhere
yeah,
it says something like that, and I was like, okay, that sounds quite good actually.
yeah,
Um,
it's been fun.
in terms of partnership, I think you touched on something there just briefly. What other collaborations and partnerships do you kind of work with other, members, other people, other charity organizations, or other support groups at all? Do you want to sort of mention about some of the collaborations that you do or you have?
Yeah, yeah, so we've worked with Black Thrive before, and it's something that we want to continue doing. So we're thinking about how we can create a careers specific program for the babes because we've done like one-off kind of sessions around it, and there's been like a real want and need. So that's something that we want to continue doing with Black Thrive. Like I mentioned, Black SEM Mamas, we've done a joint kind of online wellbeing space together for neurodivergent folk. It's my alarm to remind me to eat. Um,
Okay.
yes, we've done that, and it's something we want to do more. We work with different organizations. So at the moment, we're partnering with Psychiatry UK, and we're trying to find ways that we can continue to support babes within the diagnostic process and reduce the barriers that we specifically experience. We also work closely with a charity called Thelma Maltida Owls Foundation, and they specifically support Black women. But yeah, we've been working with them. We've done online sessions as well. And then there's a group called Mind Body Therapy, who they have like a wellbeing center. So we've done collaborations with them, kind of looking at trauma recovery through alternative means to the medical model. So kind of somatic, alternative holistic therapies like massage and Reiki. Yeah, so there's quite a few. We worked with quite a few people, and we've done quite a lot of advocating work as well in terms of like running training and workshops, raising awareness about neurodiversity in the workplace and universities. So like next week, we're going to do a session with Exeter University, for example. Um, yeah, so it's quite a breadth. It's quite a
Yeah.
breadth.
So all of that, what you said, is it the focus specifically around Black women and Black non-binary community, or is it just some of the things you mentioned about like raising ADHD awareness in the workplace, university? Is that with the focus around the Black community?
Um, to a degree, but when I do the training specifically for like universities or for workplaces, it's kind of a general look at neurodiversity, ADHD with a bit more time, and then I'll bring in the intersectional points. So yeah, I will speak about the fact that race will impact how we move in the world. We'll also look at how gender like impacts how we move in the world. And then specific to the organization, like the last one I did, they were an arts college. So then we specifically dove into how neurodivergency can show up within art spaces. Yeah, so that those ones are more kind of general with neurodiversity, but bringing in that intersectional lens.
Just focusing on education, really. I'm just trying to think about because I used to work in CAMS. I don't know if you know CAMS, Child and
Um,
Adolescent Mental Health Services. It's called
mhm,
MindWorks nowadays. But um, if we think about exclusion rates, the lack of understanding amongst some of our young people, particularly young Black young people,
mhm,
some of them had a diagnosis of ADHD, some of them didn't have.
mm,
But what is your take on that? Because I feel if you look at like exclusion rates, that's one part of it, and then you look at these people referral units, the specialist schools that they end up going to. If you
yeah,
think of the trajectory journey where some young person might be struggling, be it for
mhm,
so many reasons, with a focus again around the Black community, um, how I felt that there was some misunderstanding to some degree where a young person might be struggling, their issues to some extent wasn't picked up, and then they'll end up being
exactly.
excluded from the school. And next thing, they are going to a specialist school. A
Mhm,
few cases ended up going down the criminal justice route and being, arrested and getting a criminal record and things.
mhm.
I'm sure you come across this and you heard about this, and I'm sure
Yeah,
yourself, as growing up, you probably came across all of that. What's your view of that?
yeah, I think you're completely right. I think the Peru to prison pipeline is real. Carla speaks about it in his book so eloquently. Yeah, I think there's like a like they know the stats are there saying that we're making up a high percentage within spaces like Peru's. But I do think there's lots of studies that have shown that there's a harsher treatment towards, for example, young Black boys within the classroom from their teachers. So I think there's something about like exhibiting behavior and how people perceive and categorize it. So two people can do the exact same thing, but if it's a young Black boy, that might now be categorized as okay, you're being disruptive or you're unmanageable. But if somebody else does it, it might invoke a different emotion that looks at, oh, okay, what's wrong? What's happened? Whereas I don't necessarily think that we're getting asked those questions, and it's actually being answered already. It's just that you're unmanageable, we can't manage your behavior. And then with Black women, it's kind of okay, well, because often women are more likely to have inattentive type ADHD, for example. So yeah, you have great quality work, but you don't finish. There's not like a follow up of, oh, okay, why aren't we tapping into your full potential? Why is it that you can't finish what you're doing? It's kind of like packaged as they're just not trying hard enough. They're just lazy. They just can't commit to their work. So I think yeah, like how people appraise our behavior under this like racialized umbrella in the West, I think puts us at a huge disadvantage. And then you add on all the other difficulties, like the area that you grew up in, your household income, all of those add on. And I can definitely, yeah, I went to school in North London, and the disparity of like where a lot of us turned out is bizarre. Like we started off in such a you don't realize it at the time because you're a child, but then you leave and you're like, wow, that's not the way children are supposed to experience the education system. Like you're surrounded by gun and knife crime, you're you're surrounded by gang culture. And then, of course, if you're surrounded by those things, the risk of heading down that road is heightened unless you have something that kind of protects you from it or gives you an alternative option. And I know for me, like having education and having sport and having music was like, okay, I'm really interested in this thing. So I can pivot towards that way. But if someone didn't have those things or they couldn't, no one helped them find it, you're kind of like left, yeah, you're left to the
Yeah.
lions, really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's about having an outlet, isn't it? As you say, finding a niche passion, or someone that believes in you as well.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. Like I was really lucky I did the Duke of Edinburgh project, and I can definitely credit like the shift in trajectory to my behavior around that like critical mark of like 15, 16, 17 to being in those spaces where they were super encouraging and we were learning things about Black history that they didn't teach us in school that changed the way I looked at myself as a Black person in Britain. So yeah, even things like that, like the lack of education around our history and how like racial self-esteem is a real thing. Like if you're constantly being told that you're the problem, you're the lowest statistic, it grates away at you. It creates a way of seeing ourselves and people that look like us. So yeah, there's the pro system exclusion rates, they need to change. And I know there's people that are
Yeah.
working on it, but it's yeah, the system itself is failing us.
And from the inside, in terms of us, obviously from the Black community, there is the element of mistrust and not wanting to label ourselves, our children, our view around that as well also plays a part. Because I've come across situations whereby I went to a school meeting and clearly we were working with a young person who's, again, from the Black community. Clearly, that there is evidence that this young person will benefit from being assessed for ADHD, being diagnosed, but the parents were so against it.
Hmm.
Uh, Obviously, they have their personal reasons for that, but I think it can also make it difficult as much as, school and everyone else might be in support and picking up that this young person might benefit from being assessed. So yeah, there's two elements to it: the lack of understanding, lack of awareness, mistrust, all of
Hmm.
that feeds into that as well.
Yeah, 100%. And then it just creates a perfect storm.
Yeah,
Creates a perfect storm. Yeah.
absolutely. Some of the misconceptions that you come across from your babes, as you call them, these are your members, then I'm assuming.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
so what are, yeah, I think you touched on some of them there, like the typical narrative, which I don't like saying it, but the angry Black woman narrative that people tend to say. What are
Hmm.
some of the other things that people tend to say, particularly when they come to you around misconception, myths, that sort of thing?
Um, yeah, there's the angry Black woman trope. There's the uh needing to overtly show that you are friendly and you are not a threat. Kind of not being given the grace to actually just be quiet. And to just be somebody who's physically in the room. And if you do not show that kind of overt friendliness, being labeled as like, yeah, standoffish or they're not friendly, they're rude, as far as saying that they're rude. Um, if you speak up about problems and you identify things, or even stand up for yourself, um, that whole you're feisty, argumentative, or emotional, like too emotional, too sensitive, um, and then I guess on a like more wider level, like outside of work, there's also like an assumption of strength and this like endless well of strength that uh we're expected to kind of just carry and go through the world. So when we finally get to a space of like seeking softness and vulnerability and support and saying, okay, actually I struggle with this and I struggle with that, the perception of our strength almost like brushes out what we're saying. It's like the lens of no, but you're strong, no, but you've done this before, so why can't you do it now? Even though we're saying when I was doing that thing, it was eating away at me. When I was doing that thing, it was causing me to be depressed. It was leading to burnout. It was, I lost myself in trying to keep up with the expectations. But that being able to see us as vulnerable and deserving of softness and safety and support, like there's definitely a theme of like yeah, but you're strong. And that causing even like casting a sense of doubt, like, or am I over exaggerating? Like, am I just not trying hard enough? Maybe I if I did do it before, maybe I can do it again. Um, yeah, it's very invalidating.
100%. And I've discussed this so many times in this podcast about the inconsistencies of ADHD that one minute you can do it and the next minute you can't. Certainly the
Hmm.
pressure comes being an adult as well, where there's so much expectation. And then you add on if you're a female, again, some of females are parents, the expectation required to function as an adult. So
Mm,
some of that might cause you to feel like if I'm reaching out and saying I'm struggling with A, B, C, D, you might be
mm,
seen as a failure or
mm,
not fulfilling your potential, which might then prevent you or question whether you might actually have something like ADHD in this case.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and I was definitely guilty of that. Like when I'm doing well, I'm like, oh my God, look at me. Like feel feel like on top of the world. And then yeah, I forget that it's so it's so fluid, like it's such an up and down experience. And yeah, or if I look back and I'm like, oh, but yeah, last time I was able to do X. So maybe I'm just like not trying hard enough. There's definitely the the inconsistencies of the way our brain processes and like has capacity can make it hard to make sense of like what we're actually experiencing. But I think yeah, definitely that we speak a lot about compassion and self-acceptance within the group where it's like actually, is there ways that we can create structures around us that accommodate for our ups and downs? So does that mean like doing projects where we extend the deadline so that we know, okay, there might be a couple times in this month that I dip down with my capacity. I've given myself an extended amount of time, so I'll have the time to pick back up. Yeah, so we've really just been focusing on that because there are ways to accommodate ourselves.
Obviously, your group is focused around females, non-binary people from the Black community. Is there anything for the male side of things at all that you are aware of?
Um, Not for Black men. There is a support group, ADHD men on Twitter. I've seen them. But I would love, and I've said this to like five Black men that I know have ADHD. Like I would love if we could expand ADHD babes and there could be a chapter that was specifically for Black men. Because I've met so many, and some of them message us and kind of I've helped a couple of them get a diagnosis officially. So it's like that space is also necessary and needed, but I don't want to be the one to set it up because I'm not of that. It's not my identity. I don't want to like spearhead something that I don't have lived experience of, but I would love to help support and set that up.
There is one, but it's based over in the States. They do accept members
Um,
from across the world, the
oh
ADHD Men's
yes.
Support Group. Yeah.
Oh
When I was
yes,
in
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah, you've heard about it.
Yeah.
When I interviewed them actually for this podcast last year when I was in the States, and yeah,
Nice.
as I said, they accept members across the world. But I was more thinking around something similar to ADHD Babes, where you do things online, but yeah, you do things in the community. Certainly in the
Hmm.
UK, where people can see you and you can do all these amazing, fantastic works, projects, and things. So if anyone's listening to this podcast who might be inspired to set up something like what we're
And I'd love to
describing, that'd
help.
be great.
If they have
Yeah,
any questions, if they want any ideas, I'm happy to like tell them everything that I did with setting up ADHD Babes because I think Black men deserve the space as well.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'd
yeah,
love for that to exist.
absolutely. And on that point, just going forward in terms of goals, aspirations that you have for ADHD Babes, do you want to sort of maybe mention some of these?
Yeah, a long-term goal, I would love for us to have a space. Because there's definitely a thing of like someone said it, I think it was Shauna that said it actually, like oh no, it was one of our hosts, one of our support group hosts. They were saying the importance of having a third space, and how sometimes if I think they heard it in a podcast, sometimes going from home to work and home to work can feel quite monotonous. Having a third space where it's like in between my kind of necessary things, I can have a space that is just for me, just for debriefing, just for soothing. And I'd love for us to have a well-being space where people can come and be in a physical space that is accommodating to their ADHD needs. Besides that, we want to like launch our kind of anti-stigma, equity, and equality side of our organization because we started very much focused on like the care and support side. collaborating, raising awareness, but that specific umbrella of how do we make systemic change so that our living experience and all neurodivergent people's experience within the UK are better? How can we actually make the people who are making decisions make decisions that are more inclusive? Um, so yeah, that's something that we want to move into a lot more. And yeah, just to continue to grow, like we are applying for like more funding pots so we can do more in-person things like retreats and kind of more like long-term courses because a lot of the funding we get is small for one-off projects. But being able to create like a whole system where somebody can come to us and have no idea what they're doing and where they want to go, and we can like create a whole care package around that person where we can see like transformative change. And we've seen it like even with the like as we're emerging, people coming who have been in like long-term unemployment and then volunteered with us and then worked with us and then felt confident to start applying for work and then now they're back in work. So we've seen that the process works, like if you can accommodate people and like see the best in them. So yeah, I think just expanding that so it's sustainable will be the next steps.
In terms of like, I'm thinking about charities like the ADHD Foundation or ADHD UK, those big UK charities based in the UK. Do you ever work with them at all, or have they reached out to you? Have you reached out to them before?
We did reach out to our ADHD Foundation, and we've kind of yeah we've had one-off conversations a few times. We were actually supposed to do some training with them, but yeah, the person that was coming they fell unwell, so we haven't been able to reschedule. But yeah, I think it would be good to work with people like them because they are kind of the most established ADHD spaces. They're often the kind of go-to for people. Yeah, that would be good.
And yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
If anyone out there wants to get involved and support ADHD Babes, like your mission particularly, how can they get involved?
So if you're a member of our community, you can join as a member, or you can join our mailing list. You can also just attend our support groups, like they're always open and always free. Um, so yeah, you can kind of just touch base from there. If you are not of the community, we have a GoFundMe that's currently up. We're trying to raise 1,619 more so that we can pay for one diagnosis a month for a year for babes from the community. So yeah, we're nearly there. We've got enough for about seven. So yeah, we just need kind of five more. So yeah, you can donate physically. You can follow us on social media. You can share just share what we do. I think a lot of the people that come to us is through word of mouth. So just speaking about what we're doing. So if there is somebody out there that is aligned and we're able to collaborate, that in itself is a contribution. And also
Yeah.
just be nice to neurodivergent people.
Yeah. Do you ever go to like conferences and these meetings that take place, some of them in the UK, specifically around ADHD, and also like abroad, like over in the States?
No, and that's something that I should probably work on. Yeah, so that's something for me to go and
Yeah,
look at my introverted self and psych
of
myself
course.
up to start going.
Absolutely. Listen, your work is amazing, got my attention, and I think there is lots of people I'm thinking of there that I know that will definitely benefit from you. Certainly,
Mm,
for me to find out about you, which is great, but from the States, got me thinking. Like, I'm sure there's so many other people based in the UK that actually are
mhm.
not familiar with yourselves and what you do, and so I
Yeah.
wanted to shine the light on you today and spread the word. And again, the I like your mission, and I'm hoping some sort of collaboration that we can do from
Hmm.
now going forward will be amazing. Uh,
Yeah.
um, Finally, do you have any sort of last final message for Black women or non-binary people out there from the Afro-Caribbean descent in terms of navigating life with ADHD?
Mm. You're not alone in your experiences. There is a wealth of community that will hold space for you, even if the world doesn't. And just a reminder that, the barriers that are placed in front of us are not things that we chose. They're things that we are like claiming power back to navigate through. And sometimes it's actually okay. Like someone said it in a support group, I think, that sometimes you can be like hitting your head against a wall trying to get through, but maybe you can just use that wall to rest for a period of time and then decide what you want to do next. So yeah, I would just really encourage like a constant level of compassion because we're juggling so many different things and the way we navigate through the world has so many layers. Again, that we didn't choose. So I think, yeah, leaning on that compassion and that steadiness, like it's difficult right now. Um, and just to look back and remember how many times it's been difficult and you've been able to overcome it. And I think, yeah, a way that I know has helped me a lot is really focusing and like protecting time to center things that are around joy and happiness. Because I think the natural state of the world can feel quite demoralizing and disconcerting. So I think really, yeah, really tapping into like what gives me joy, like what like makes me feel alive. How can I stay connected to community? And it doesn't have to be ADHD babes. It can be like your knitting group or like your gamers group, like whatever gives you that little like spark in your stomach. How much time have you invested to like protecting that? Because the world is always just going to take your time regardless. So sometimes we have to do two steps ahead, and sometimes we need more time because we're dealing with more difficulties. So yeah, just afford yourself that compassion and that joy. Yeah, and you're not alone in it.
Well said. And for yourself, with your journey with ADHD, where are you now, sort of 5 years into this diagnosis?
Um, Ironically, I'm back on the waiting list for my ADHD clinic, um, which I just find hilarious, but
Right.
yeah, it is what it is. Um, so I'm at a stage where I think I'm finally able to accept internally and externally that the way my brain works is different, and that is actually okay. Um, Still kind of working through figuring out all the accommodations that I need to do the things that I want. Um, but there's definitely so much more of like a self-acceptance and being able to appreciate where my strengths come in through ADHD, whereas before all the difficulties was where my focus was. And now I credit that to the community, like having that mirror of people that look like me has been like life-saving. Yeah, so I'm definitely in a much better space. Since being diagnosed, it was the first time I was able to keep a full-time job. Um, so yeah, it's definitely been a progressive journey. I do want to try medication. That's probably the next thing that I want to try to see how that influences my like motivation and concentration. Um, yeah, and just continuing to be in community spaces, I think is yeah, my next focus.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish you well with that journey.
Thank
Um,
you.
if people want to reach out, do you want to tell us your website and social media
Mhm.
handles and all of that?
Yeah, so in a very ADHD friendly way, it is the same on everything. So it's ADHD Babes with an S on the end. So ADHDbabes.com, ADHD Babes on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We need to get the YouTube, actually, forgot about that. But yeah, we're across all the platforms. And if you wanted to email us, you can email adhdbabes@gmail.com or admin@adhdbabes.com. Um, yeah, yeah, we're here. Even if you just want to say hi, or say
Yeah.
hey back and ask you how your day was. So yeah.
Yep. And certainly if people want to donate as well, they can just go to your website. And you said you've got a
Mhm.
GoFundMe currently on. Do you want to mention about
Yes.
that quickly?
Yeah, yeah. So we launched it in October. So we've made enough, and what we want to prioritize with what has been donated is the free diagnostic um pathway that we're creating with Psychiatry UK. So yeah, the GoFundMe is on our social media and on our website. So if you wanted to donate to that, yeah, that would be really helpful. Like you'd be giving a giving a babe a diagnosis that would otherwise take 3 to 5 years on the waiting list with the NHS, and it gives people access to support at work, support in education. Like it is a um life changing thing. So
Yeah. 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 Wow. I wish you well with that, and I wish all your babes well as well.
Thank you.
I'm just getting my head around that word. I'm like, gosh, okay. I like it in a professional way, of course, but
Yes, yes, yes.
uh,
No, no,
uh,
it's fun.
yeah, yeah, and we'll definitely stay in touch, and
Mhm.
I'll be quite keen to track your journey, see how how everything's going, and certainly any opportunities for us to collaborate. As I said, we got your details, and I'm sure we'll definitely be reaching out. And if there are any projects or things that you are doing, just let us know. As I said,
Yeah.
we have a huge client base of ADC. That's what we specialize. That's what we do on a day to day, and we're very
Mm,
passionate about that. We're passionate about making differences in community and bringing people like you onto the platform in terms of making people aware of some of the amazing work that you do. Because every time people ask me, like, where can I get this? How can I get support for this and that? So that's what I like about, what I do in terms of doing the podcast
yeah.
and my clinical work as well. So
Mm. It's a nice
yeah,
mix.
thank you. Yeah, yeah, it's great. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's keep waving that flag.
Yes, yes, we will. Yes, we will.
Of course. All
Thank
right,
you.
Vivienne, it's been a pleasure having you. And we'll drop all your details in the podcast description when it comes out, and
Amazing.
certainly people can reach out to you.
Okay, cool. That sounds so
All
good.
right.
Thank you.
I'll let you go and have your food because I know you're starving now. You had your alarm.
Thank you. Only
No
27
problems.
minutes late.
Exactly. All right. Take care. Enjoy
All
the
right.
rest of your day. See you
You
later.
too. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.